Welcome to Cyclone InCYders. I'm Taylor Mankle here, welcoming you to this episode where we're going to be talking some men's basketball, women's basketball, gymnastics, softball, and of course, your other headlines in Iowa State athletics. We've got Hayley McPike on the program for the very first time, along with Ben Olson here, as we're going to start off by breaking down some Iowa State men's basketball. And of course, we're going to start off with basically all of their postseason, kind of break down the journey that was to get to the ending point that we just saw a couple days ago. So that all starts in the Big 12 tournament. Obviously coming out champions there, the third time in the last 4 seasons for the Cyclones. Yeah. Talk about the performance as a whole for the Cardinal and Gold out there, Ben, in order to grab this championship.
For me, it was really promising to see Iowa State play this way headed into the NCAA tournament. I think Iowa State really came out, and from the very first game with Oklahoma State, we got to see them set the tone for the whole tournament, where they started their hot shooting, which really seemed to be a theme lately and helped them. And then, of course, we got the break with TCU pulling off a little magic of their own against Kansas, and then in the championship game, Iowa State really just finally found their groove against a team that they had troubles with in an up-and-down Big 12 regular season. So I think the key, mainly for me, though, for Iowa State grabbing this championship was the veteran experience that they had with all the seniors.
For sure. And Hayley, what do you think led the Cyclones in the Big 12 tournament to such success?
Kind of going off of what Ben said, I'd say the seniors definitely helped out with that. Monte Morris definitely was just a great leader on the floor. Deontay Burton did great, and along with Daryl Bowie, he did a great job. He just basically turned into like a new person and just did really well in the tournament. Yeah,
Daryl Bowie, definitely a player that exceeded what he had been doing beforehand in this tournament. That really gave Iowa State an extra edge. You guys talked about both of those. Both of you talked about the seniors, how important they were, specifically Monte Morris. Ben, I want your take. Do you think Monte was out there trying to prove something after not making the Cousy finalist list, really on a big stage in the Big 12 tournament? Was he trying to prove something to everybody out there?
Oh, definitely, in my opinion. And I bet even more, I bet he was mad that he didn't get that matchup with Frank Mason for the third time. Yeah. But Monte really just seemed to be in control for all 3 of Iowa State's games in the Big 12 tournament with an impressive stat line. I think he was about 1 stat away from a triple-double in both of Iowa State's first games. So really, like we said, seniors, and then he stepped up. And I just think that he definitely felt snubbed, and he wanted the rest of the Big 12 and those watching to know it.
Yeah, absolutely. Even within a little bit down the line, we'll talk about this a little later, he went out to the public and said he is the best point guard in the nation. We'll get your guys' thoughts just a little bit from that. But obviously this victory, Hayley, or these victories, I should say, against Okie State, TCU, and then West Virginia really propelled Iowa State to a great momentum going into the NCAA tournament, and also propelled them to a 5 seed. Getting put on that 5 seed, were you expecting them to be there? Expecting them a little lower, a little higher? What did you think about where they were placed in the NCAAs?
I thought that was definitely a good ranking, I would say. I guess like their record, they should have won some games that they definitely should have, I guess. So that's probably why they didn't get ranked as high, but definitely winning that tournament would put that up.
Yeah, for sure. Did you think a 5 seed was just for Iowa State then?
I was happy they got the 5 seed. I thought that was the limit for them. I did not expect them to go any higher.
Sure.
I also, when the seeding came out, I was a little worried, of course, about a 5-12 matchup because you hear about the upsets every year. So I was honestly, personally hoping for a 6. But, then we'll get into how Iowa State played, so I think the 5 was good for them.
Yeah, obviously the 5 didn't go too terribly. They faced up against Nevada, won that game 84-73. Hayley, what stuck out to you in the round 1 game against the Wolfpack?
I'll say definitely Monte Morris again.
Yeah.
He scored 19 points, had 8 rebounds and 8 assists. So that's pretty close to a triple-double. That's pretty amazing. So definitely that stuck out to me. But just like, you know how Iowa State's just like a second half team? They played really well like from the get-go.
Yeah,
So that was great for them.
Yeah, that was definitely refreshing to see for a bunch of Iowa State fans out there. Iowa State came out shooting in that game, and kind of the hot shooting continued to propel them. Talk about the Wolfpack game, Ben.
Like Hayley said, it was great to see Iowa State lead in a tournament game for pretty much the majority of the game. And if you look at their matchup with Nevada, I thought Nevada seemed more like a poor man's Iowa State with the run and gun and the threes. And so for Iowa State to come out and shoot hot, I think they continued their streak of shooting above 50%. Yeah. It was really important for them to get that win. And, I mean, you look at all the analysts that were counting Iowa State out in this game. That really surprised me. I mean, Seth Davis, he was driving me nuts during the selection show, but it was really refreshing to see Iowa State come out. I think, once again, this group of seniors knew what they had to take care of business, and they got it done against the 12 seed.
They did, and then that set them up for a very difficult task against the Purdue Boilermakers, the 4 seed over on the Midwest side, and they put in quite an effort in that game. But let's start off, before we get into the 19-point comeback, what did Iowa State struggle with, Hayley, in this second-round matchup so much to allow Purdue to get up to as much as a 19-point lead?
Yeah, they just honestly could not stop their posts and their bigs. Caleb Swanigan and Isaac Haas definitely had just like so many buckets, it seemed like, and we just could not match up with them at all. So that definitely did not help us at all.
Yeah, you know, Iowa State has had problems for years now against bigs of different teams. We've seen it in first person against Baylor year in and year out, basically. But, Ben, how are they able to combat that and able to mount this 19-point comeback that eventually put them in the lead with just a couple minutes to go?
They finally started taking advantage of mismatches. You look at Burton finished, what did he finish the game with? 25 points and 4 rebounds. He was huge in that second half. And Matt Thomas had the hot shooting hand all night. But once again, I mean, it can't come down to the starters. And so the bench points was a big thing in this one. Purdue dominated Iowa State in that category. Yeah. And so Iowa State started taking advantage of the mismatches and was able to come back, but I feel like it was a little too late, and that's what happens in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, the comeback was in full effect, but Purdue again went to their big man, Swanigan. How was he able to close out that game, Hayley?
Well, definitely like the last couple of seconds when he had that rebound, I think that was definitely a momentum shifter because we had a chance, but then it just seemed like after Swanigan got that rebound, then it just seemed like all the energy just died down, and it just seemed like it was way too late because we only had just a couple seconds, like 3 seconds left to pull off a shot, and that's just most likely not going to end well. Yeah,
the comeback did come short in that one, 80-76, the final in round 2. And now let's talk about kind of the imprint that these seniors left. Obviously, it's basically kind of an end of an era, if you will. But most of them being Fred Hoiberg, or some of them being Fred Hoiberg recruits, some of them being, or most of them, I should say, being Fred Hoiberg recruits. Talk about what they've meant to this program in their 4 years for some of them 3, Ben.
You could almost argue that they are the most influential group of seniors to come through in Iowa State basketball history. You look at really what they brought back. I feel like this group of seniors brought back Iowa State basketball program to prominence. And finally, we're starting to see that people are going to know Iowa State's name. And you look at 6 consecutive NCAA tournaments and how many wins they racked up, 3 out of 4 Big 12 titles. I think that's just unprecedented. And so we're obviously going to miss them, and we probably won't be seeing any more Hoyball out there. This was a very talented group, but we have so much to thank them for. And it's tough to see, but tough way for them to go out, but you got to smile at what they accomplished.
Yeah, absolutely. An end of an era. Hayley, talk about what these seniors meant to this year in particular, being kind of, you lose a cornerstone in George Niang last year, having to come back, but having that senior leadership. What did that mean for this year?
I would say definitely the leadership, of all, would be the best, but they just left such a great legacy, honestly, and yeah, just like the best seniors that came through Iowa State, and there's just going to be, it's going to be a lot to just make up for like what they did. So we'll see how these recruits do this next year.
And all of them were very vocal in saying they wanted to leave the program in a better state than when it got there. I think we can easily say that happened for Iowa State.
Completely agree.
Yeah, they put Iowa State back on the map. That's a very important thing. And now it's up to the young guns to see if they can keep it. So that transitions into the next question. Outlook on next season. Hayley, at this point, this season, where do you see Iowa State ending up at this time next season?
I would say it might be like a rebuilding year. I think Donovan Jackson will definitely lead the team in a way that somewhat Monte did. Just because they're so close. So I feel like Monte definitely gave him some pointers with that. I think Solomon Young will also definitely step up, but just all up to the recruits and see how they do as well.
Yeah, there are a couple really young recruits that do have a big opportunity this year to contribute at a high level, especially on this team. And you'll probably end up seeing a couple grad transfers on this squad as well. Ben, what do you think about next year's program?
It's going to be another opportunity for us to see a great coaching from Coach Prohm, as it's finally going to be his team.
Those are his guys, exactly.
It's going to be some young guys, and I really think, I believe Wigginton is the new best recruit coming into Iowa State ahead of what Matt Thomas was. So we got more promise for the future, and it's really, we're just going to have to see how they develop. I think it'll be a developing year, especially losing like behind-the-scenes stuff like Naz and Monte with vocal leadership. Yeah. And so we're going to see this Iowa State team grow next season. I know that, but I'm really excited for what they can continue going with what has been built here.
Is it a tourney team?
Yes, I'm going to go tourney team next year. First four.
First four? Is it a tourney team?
I would say so, yeah.
But regardless, it'll be exciting to see what Steve Prohm can do with those players. I expect to see a lot bigger, defensive rounded team. As we started to see in this year more implementing of defensive strategies, I expect to see potentially a defensive run team next year, but we will see how it all shapes out. And that's all we have time for the men's basketball segment here. We're going to be back. Mary Rominger is going to join me at the desk. We're going to talk all kinds of Cyclone sports, women's basketball, gymnastics, softball, and more. Stay tuned to Cyclone InCYders.
When I was a young boy, my father took me into the city to see a marching band. He said,
Tune into the midweek roundup with me, your host, Michael Morrell.
I'm Jacob Lee.
We are going to talk about all sorts of things like baseball, or even debate the fact that the Vikings are going to finish third in the NFC North this year.
They're going to win the North again this year.
Tim Weeman, host of the Sound of the Storm.
Connor Ferguson.
Hunter Smith.
Talk about all college sports and NFL, MLB, and our Storm is definitely brewing.
I'm Blake Akery, and I'm the host of Sports View.
And I'm TJ Reed.
We talk college basketball and NBA.
And all things Iowa State.
Tim Weeman.
Patrick Stanek.
Hank Zimmerman.
Tune into the weekend pregame as we warm up the sports weekend ahead, including many segments with Pick'ems and Tim's Trivia.
I'm Taylor Mankle.
I'm Mary Rominger.
I'm Andre Safar.
And I'm Joey Mullins.
And we talk a lot of different sports here, including
NHL and Cyclone hockey,
world football, American football,
basketball, and many other segments. Make sure to step into the Clone Zone.
I'm Michael Manzer.
I'm Mary Rominger.
I'm Dylan Ryan.
And I'm Zach Williamson.
And this is Cyclone Talk. Listen in for live interviews and analysis from these guys.
Welcome back to Cyclone InCYders. Taylor Mankle back with you. Mary Rominger welcomes me at the desk as well, as we've got a lot more Cyclone athletics to talk about, including women's basketball. They were in the NCAA tournament as well, and wasn't the best. Wasn't the best we've seen in the Cyclones this year, but it was a very tough team in Syracuse. And let's kind of break down that game, Mary. Started in about the worst possible way for these Cyclone women. Talk about how Syracuse was really able to jump all over them in the first quarter.
Yeah, the first quarter set the tone for the entire game. It was where they lost the game in this first quarter. And it started with a lot of errors in Iowa State's game. Iowa State's shooting right off the bat was not to what they wanted in any way. They went 2 for 18, and then on top of that, their transition wasn't what they had planned for it to be.
For sure.
Their plan was to eliminate that pass to get them down the court and avoid any type of turnover, but Syracuse forced them to the outside, forced them to try and make that pass, which led to 6 turnovers forced by Syracuse, which ended up being a big factor in that hefty lead that they took. They took a 33-8 lead heading into that second quarter, and now as on top of that, in Iowa State's game was them being out-rebounded. They were out-rebounded 15-10, which didn't help their case to start off this game. But that's not to take anything away from Syracuse. Syracuse, right off the bat, had a strong three-point game. And we've talked about this a lot. When you have a strong three-point game, you have a lot of success. And now with that, their game plan was to focus on Brittany Sykes and Alexis Peterson. They're 2 very big names for Syracuse, so they wanted to put that extra. Iowa State wanted to put that extra defender on those 2 players. Although it wasn't any of those 2 players that came out firing hot from the three-point line, and that ended up being Gabby Cooper. And she went 5. She hit 5 of her first 10 shots, and that really solidified that hefty lead for Iowa State. So really, you saw that once Iowa State was able to shift their defense to focus more on her, the game evened out. But really, all things weren't going well for Iowa State, and Syracuse had a stellar performance.
No, absolutely. It was a fantastic performance out of Syracuse, and I think that was really stemmed from some incredible players. Like you mentioned, Sykes and Peterson, that's the best backcourt in NCAA women's basketball. I will stand by that. That is the best backcourt in NCAA women's basketball for sure. And they showed it. That was more in the later quarters. In the first quarters, as you mentioned, Cooper really picked up the pieces, and they were giving her open looks. The thing of Iowa State's defense, it was scheming towards Peterson and Sykes in that first quarter, which left Cooper with a ton of open looks. She connected, and you know it's going to be a bad quarter when the opposing team is shooting upwards of 60%. Iowa State, at the same time, could not find the bottom of the net. If they could pay for it, they could not find the bottom of the net. And that really, it was a perfect storm in that first quarter. But going off of that, the second, third, and fourth, Iowa State was in it. Iowa State technically won some of these quarters. So talk about, and you kind of mentioned this, they started to scheme over to Cooper a little bit. Talk about what else Iowa State was able to do on the offensive end to, get back into this game. Theoretically, I mean, the margin of error was so slim, they couldn't really get farther but to about 17 points from Syracuse. But more on a technical side, what were they able to do to get them back on the offensive end?
Yeah, kind of like you're describing right now. It's a tough question because it's once you had such a strong deficit or such a hefty deficit to try and come back from, it's really hard to see where they adjusted their game. But it was Shauna Johnson was able to reach to have a double-double, which was pretty big in that sense. Other than that, I can't see too many silver linings beyond Shauna Johnson. Iowa State did come out and they did equalize their play, which is very notable. But when you look at the game overall, Sykes, Cooper, and Peterson had a combined 77 points. And then you look at Iowa State's big three, who is supposed to carry this team offensively, they had a combined 42 points. So it's really hard for me at the end of this game in such a prominent game to see past what Syracuse was able to do offensively to kind of shut down Iowa State.
Yeah, for sure. It's really to find silver linings in a game like this, but you mentioned one, Shauna Johnson went out, finished her career doing only something that we've seen Shauna Johnson do for her whole career. 4 straight years we've seen this, going out there, really cutting through the defense, slashing to the basket, finding ways to score when it doesn't look like it's possible out there, and then not to mention grabbing rebounds above or around much larger players. Shauna's been doing that for 4 years. A salute to her and her career as a Cyclone, one of the best to ever put on the Cardinal and Gold for the women's basketball team. And one thing that Bill Fenley mentioned in his post-game press conference was she truly is the epitome of what women's college basketball is supposed to be. Someone who comes in, works on their game, gets better all 4 years, but contributes at a high level not only to her team, not only to the leadership of her team, but also the community. And not only does she improve the university university improves her. So we totally give a hats off to Shauna Johnson and what she did for this Iowa State program over her 4 years. But this was also saying goodbye to some other seniors and a redshirt junior in Jada Buckley, as she announced that she will not be coming back next year. She'll forgo her senior year, which would have been her 5th year. How much do you think that means to next year's squad, Mary?
In terms of next year's squad, there is a lot that has to be done with the coaching staff to figure out what they're going to do to replace players like you just preached, Shauna Johnson, point guard Jada Buckley, and so on. There is a pretty good crowd, or a pretty good class that's leaving Iowa State, but they have T.T. Starks, Adriana Camber, Nia Washington, Bridget Carlton, Meredith Burkhall, and Sophia Zavolovich coming back. So that will be the core, and they will have to do some pretty good recruiting to find those staples like Shauna Johnson was offensively, and like also Bridget Carlton and the players that are here will be able to step up a lot, and there's a lot of skill that will happen. So it's really just a matter of seeing what the coaching staff is able to do in this off-season and recruiting season to build up this squad to what it can be, because the leaders that were the Iowa State women's basketball team have left, so they have to find that.
Yeah, they've got some good recruits coming in next year, including one from I think it's Illinois, if I'm not mistaken, who will in my opinion, start right off the bat. She will try to help the guard court that does lose a lot in Shauna Johnson and Jada Buckley. But the real big question for me in particular is, what do you do at point guard? Jada Buckley had a chance to come back for her 5th year and really, be one of the best point guards in the Big 12. She decides to forego that senior season. It leaves a lot of questions. Is Nia Washington ready to step into that point guard position? Can, Emily Durr and Bridget Carlton pick up some of that point guard position? Or will they go the grad transfer route, grab somebody there, or will a freshman be ready? These are the questions that the offseason will need to be made in. And as Bill Fenley said in his post-game press conference, that's when teams are made. We are excited to be able to look forward to that. And with that question, I want to ask you, this season, an incredible coaching job. From the start of the season to the end of it, we saw so much improvement. What are your overall thoughts on this season, Mary?
Yeah, my overall thoughts on this season are I really want to magnify what they did at the end of the regular season with those 5 straight Big 12 victories. Now, for a team like Iowa State, who started out 4-9 in the Big 12, which was an awful start and nothing like they wanted to achieve, for them to be able to turn that around, and not only did they turn it around, those 5 victories solidified their spot in the NCAA tournament because they weren't able to get much done in the Big 12 tournament, and those 5 wins did so much for this team in this postseason and for the confidence getting that big win against Texas. So really my overall thoughts are the fact that they were able, coaching-wise, player-wise, to make that turnaround makes me excited for what's to come in the future. Regardless of who's returning, I know that the heart of this team can turn things around when it's most important.
Absolutely. And just touching back on what I just mentioned, I wanted to give you guys some names to what I was talking about. It was actually the wing from Indiana, Greenfield, Indiana, coming in, Madison Wise. She's a 5-star recruit, 96 scouts overall, as according to ESPNW. 6'1" wing coming in this next class, and she really can do just about all of it. She will need to improve on her outside game, but she's an incredible slasher, including a mid-range and a quick first step. She could make huge impressions on this next season for the Iowa State Cyclones. Rayana Johnson is another one. That's potentially somebody who could take some of the point guard responsibilities after losing Jada Buckley. She comes in as a true point guard, standing at 5'8" from Minnesota. She's got a 90 overall scout grade and a 3-star coming into Iowa State. She plays with a lot of confidence and demeanor. We will see if that translates into Iowa State's program next year. And then you've got Kristen Scott, a power forward, also a 90 scout rating coming from the state of Minnesota next year for Iowa State. We'll see how those freshmen are integrated into Bill Fenley's system. But that being said, where do you think at this time next year the Iowa State women's basketball team will be?
This time next year, if they're able to fix their offensive depth, and with those recruits that you just mentioned, amongst whatever else is going to happen, if they can get that offensive scoring that teams like the best teams in the country and in the Big 12 are able to do, you saw a lot of those really high-scoring players in these past 2 tournaments. So if they can find that, I think that's a big area that's lacking. So therefore, if they can find that, I think that they can do some pretty good things. I want to say that they will appear where they appeared this season, hopefully ranked a little higher by improving their regular season play. Although when you look around at the other teams in this country, like UConn, like Syracuse, who was ranked number 8 and played like a seed much higher than that, it's more of a test to if those teams are going to keep being hot. And, you know, it's really hard to get past things like that because Iowa State could have potentially had to play UConn. And if that situation or scenario were to happen next year, I don't think that they would still be able to kind of top those things. But those are really high scenarios that I just mentioned.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough out there next year for Iowa State. We've been preaching all year the Big 3 just became one in Bridget Carleton. So that's going to be tough to come back from. It's going to be interesting to see how these freshmen, potential grad transfers are implemented. But regardless, we'll be here on Cyclone InCYders to break it all down coming up next year. Well, I won't be. Mary will be, so hold up. Regardless, let's move on to some more Iowa State athletics. We've got Iowa State Gymnastics. Big news coming out recently as the whole team made regionals after their Big 12 championship performance where they took 4th place. Wasn't the best we've seen them all year, but they've had some really good times this year which have propelled them to making this regional the first time in quite some time, if I'm not mistaken. So talk about your expectations, Mary, for this team going into regionals.
Going into the Nebraska regionals, I expect a team not so much like we saw from the Big 12 championship. They did place 4th place, but they did go up against some really hefty competition in teams like the number 1 seed Oklahoma, who gave Iowa State their only loss at home this season in a 9-1 home record. Therefore, not in reference to how they performed in the Big 12 I have basketball terms all mixed up. In the Big 12 championship, now for the NCAA Nebraska regional, I think they can accomplish huge things.
I think so.
I really do, because they are the underdogs in many cases.
I'd say so, yeah.
In this upcoming regional, but I know that they can do a lot of. They want to prove themselves.
Yeah,
I
for
know
sure.
they have a fire, they have a heart, and they want to prove themselves and they want to do damage. Now, I've been around the gymnastics team more last year when I covered them for the Iowa State Daily, and I know that Hayley Young and Megan Sievers are athletes like that you want in any type of athlete. They will improve their game dramatically from what they did in the Big 12 championship. They didn't have the best performances, and I think that they're going to really turn things around. Therefore, I think they can make a statement for what is in terms of what's expected of Iowa State gymnastics in this regional competition.
Yeah.
But
it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough. Just to go through the regional teams, they have the second best team in the nation behind Oklahoma, LSU in this regional. They have number 11 Boise State in this regional, number 14 the host Nebraska in this regional, number 25 Arizona, and then no slouch themselves, Minnesota in this regional. It's not going to be an easy go about it. As for team scores, individuals, some to look out for. Megan Sievers, as last year she made a regional on an individual event, or made the NCAA qualifying on an individual event. She has not seen as much success this year, but she has the power and she has the starting point values to get to a point where she could, if she performs well on vault this 2 weeks, I should say, upcoming in 2 weeks in this regional, she could make an NCAA qualifying as a team. It's going to be hard for me to see that happening. Hayley Young, she could perform very well. Potentially, Des could perform well on bars. Those are some of the performers you have to look out for. But as a team, against those different teams, I don't see it happening. Yeah, it's going to be really tough if they want to see that and see that kind of success that this women's gymnastics team has not seen for decades. So it'll be tough out there for the gymnastics squad, but we'll keep you up to date as much as possible here on ISU TV. And we've got another team that we want to dive into that we haven't been able to see in person much this year, that being the softball team. They will host their first home game this weekend, a triple header, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, depending on whether it's going to rain. But regardless, we've got softball coming in, hosting Texas Tech. And they're coming off a little bit of success over spring break. Mary, tell us about it.
Absolutely. They had a lot of game time this spring break.
Yeah.
They had one tournament at the beginning, the California tournament, and then they had a series against UCF, and then at the end they
went from California to Florida. Quite a bit of travel for these ladies.
Absolutely. And then they had a 5-game tournament. And overall, I think that this team has had a lot of practice to see what's going to work for them.
Sure.
I think over that week of a lot of play, they saw that they do have the offensive weapons to have success moving forward. They lost a couple games tied, and they took a couple games to extra innings, and they lost they had some tough losses. But overall, they have a fantastic starting pitcher in Weilbacher and what?
Close.
What is it?
Weilbacher.
Weilbacher. I was very close.
Very close. It was good effort.
Yes, exactly. So I am sorry to mispronounce her name because she really proved herself this last week.
No, she absolutely has.
She set I believe one record for the most strikeouts in a game, which I believe was 14 that she did, and she continued that in every game that she started. So I see a lot of success, a lot of potential success from this softball team from what they showed me in those 2 tournaments and 1 series. So coming off, I believe they had a 3-game winning streak heading into Texas Tech.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to bring on that momentum, and I think they really discovered themselves in what their abilities are this past week.
Yeah, it was really a good week overall for the Cyclones, which started off kind of a rough start at the UC Davis tournament, but then they turned that into some very positive things, including probably their best win of the season against UCF. The game 1 of 2 in that series against UCF, were able to take that one 5-3. That's a huge win. That's the biggest win Iowa State's had this season, and many people have been knocking this softball squad because they have not played really anyone of note in the pre-conference season, if you will. So that was a big win. That's a good thing to have on your resume, build up your RPI, especially because this year there is a Big 12 conference tournament, so that's something that they've been striving for all year. That's something they want to be in because not every team in the Big 12 makes that. And regardless, then they continue that success after a tough loss in Game 2 to UCF into the battle at the beach in Fort Myers and going 4-1 in that one, including their one loss being to Florida Gulf Coast, which they avenged in the last game of that series. So I agree. I think they learned a lot about themselves in this series, and I think they are extremely excited to be at home for the first time this season, starting off on Friday against Texas Tech, first Big 12 game of the season as well. Give me a brief preview of this one, Mary.
A brief preview. Well, I think that, like we just recently discussed, they kind of know what weapons that can have success, and that's their starting pitcher. And also, senior Bingham has performed great this past week, and I think that they know that she can lift them in crucial situations against a team like Texas Tech. I think it'll be an exciting one. Like you said, they're looking forward to being able to be at home, so they'll be able to use some of that, use some of their momentum. They have all the check marks to have success, so it's just a matter of putting forth a strong game and not letting Texas Tech overpower them offensively in any way.
Yeah, let's see how Jamie Traxel performs in her first home stand as head coach of the Iowa State softball team. That'll be exciting to watch, and we'll have ISU TV Sports out there on the scene grabbing some recaps of those games over the weekend, whenever they will be with all this rain that we have coming up. But we're going to go through some quick headlines here before we close out, and I want to stay with Mary for one of them because I know she knows way more about it than I do. Cyclone hockey, their season came to kind of an unexpected early end. Give me a brief synopsis of how it went down in the national tournament.
Yeah, the way I describe it is heartbreaking and heart-wrenching. And any team in postseason play that loses, whether expectations are with you or not, it's a heartbreaking loss.
Sure.
But the reason why especially it was, and it was this heartbreaking loss was crafted to Iowa State, is because they had all the answers, all the momentum, everything that you could possibly want leading up to a national tournament. They had to start. They had a great season. They finished the season with 2 titles, the regular season title and the CSCHL championship. Moving into the national tournament, they had strong security in net with Derek Moser. Derek Moser with a .917 save percentage, stellar save percentage to say the least. He was 19-8 on the season. Really just want to hit the nail on the head there with Derek Moser being the key to their success, and that's where all the confidence came from because he was performing at his all-time best leading up to this national tournament run. And then next, depth and offense. Really, they had it all, confidence, momentum. I mean, anyone on the team would tell you that they've had some very rough patches this season, but they were confident heading into this tournament, from the coach to the captain to one of their freshmen I talked to before this tournament. They were confident, which is really heartbreaking when you see that in the first game they were able to defeat Colorado 3-2 in a close game. I consider it close. Coach Fairman, I talked to after the game, said it wasn't so close. A couple of cheap goals got in and it could have been a shutout. But nonetheless, they went on to play UCO in the quarterfinal round and lost 6-1. And everything that had haunted them in the regular season when they went through the rough patches haunted them in that game. From taking bad penalties at crucial times when you needed to tie up the game, and now you have to spend 2 minutes on the penalty kill, all the way to just not getting any luck offensively. Everything they threw at the UCO goaltender did not go in, and really it's a hats off to the seniors. They have 6 seniors graduating, one of them being their captain, but they do have a lot of depth. By no means are they going to go through any type of rebuild next season because they have the tools to replace those seniors. But again, like I said, hats off to those seniors. They had a great run in the 4 years, a lot of success within these past 3 years from what this team used to be, and hard way to finish the season, but like I said, they had a great season, and that's something to be proud of, and I hope that that team can realize what they accomplished this year.
Absolutely, and if you want to know even more about how the season came to a close, make sure to go to Mary's website. She'll have the article up there. What's your website, Mary?
MaryLouiseRominger.com.
There you go. Head over to her website, check out her articles and different stuff Mary does. Does a great job. Now, other headlines in Iowa State athletics. Let's finish things off. Here is tennis on a 12-match winning streak. They will play next in Manhattan, Kansas, against the Wildcats, trying to extend that winning streak even more so into Big 12 play after a big W against West Virginia just recently. And then last but not least, the athletics are really slowing down at this point, but track and field just starting up their outdoor season as they were at the Tulsa Duels over the weekend and as a whole got 11 wins. They will head next over to California, Stanford Invitational. That will start on the 31st, go into the 1st. And then they also have the SF State Distance Carnival. That will be going on for track and field as well. But that is all we have time for here on Cyclone InCYders. For Hayley, McPike, Ben Olson, and Mary Rominger, I'm Taylor Mankle, wishing you all a peaceful good night.